I'm Carrie Richardson with Leadership Springfield, and we are hosting the Missouri House District 130 Candidate Forum tonight. We want to welcome the candidates and the audience to this candidate forum for Missouri House District 130. The candidate forum is a shared effort between all of these agencies on the screen. This is a coalition that came together almost a year ago now to host a series of forums to engage candidates and voters before the August and November elections. So our shared goal is to educate voters, and other partner organizations will be hosting forums for other races in the general election and ballot issues in the coming weeks. So the organizations who have been working on this effort to provide candidate forums include Be Civil, Be Heard, Drury University's Ellie Metter Center for Politics and Citizenship, Junior League of Springfield, Leadership Springfield, League of Women Voters of Southwest Missouri, Missouri State University's Public Affairs Office, NAACP Springfield, Ozarks Technical Community College's Political Science Department, Ozarks Public Broadcasting, KSMU Radio, and Springfield Greene County Library District. So like I said, Leadership Springfield is hosting this forum tonight, but those other partner agencies will be hosting other candidate forums all the way up until the election in November. And so we are going to focus tonight on the primary election for House District 130. As a reminder, the primary election is Tuesday, August 4th, and we encourage everyone to get out and vote. Let's talk a little bit about Zoom. So as audience, we do invite you to submit questions to ask the candidates. All of those partner organizations that I just shared have submitted their own questions in advance, and we will be asking those questions that the partner organizations provided of the candidates tonight. In addition to that, we'd love to have audience questions. To submit a question to ask the candidates, you just need to go to the bottom of your screen, click on the Q&A, type your question. We ask you to keep it as concise as possible. And then if you want to have your name attached to that question, just go ahead and click send. If you'd rather send the question anonymously, you can make sure it says anonymous before you send, and then click send. A representative sample of audience questions will be selected. The moderator has the discretion to select which questions to ask. As a reminder, no part of this video may be reproduced or transmitted in any form or by any means, electronic or mechanical, without the written permission of the copyright holder, which is Leadership Springfield. We have two candidates joining us tonight. I will have them wave at the screen when I read their name: Bishop Davison and Samuel Snyder. Macy Mitchell, who is also a candidate in this race, declined to participate in the forum. To give you an idea of the format for tonight, as a reminder, this is a forum, not a debate. We're having a civil conversation between candidates about the issues. The candidates will engage in a respectful conversation about why they are running for the position, why they are a qualified candidate, what their policy positions are, and how they would serve in this position if elected. This forum will be 1 hour in length. This forum will be recorded by Leadership Springfield and posted on several websites. We'll give you those website addresses at the conclusion of this forum. Questions have been submitted, like I said, by the partner organizations, and we invite you to submit questions as an audience. The candidates' names were randomly drawn to determine who will go first. Questions will be asked of each candidate on a rotating basis. We will provide an opportunity for opening and closing statements for 2 minutes each, and then I will give candidates a 30-second warning and a stop when their time is up. Every other question will be 1 or 2 minutes. There will be no opportunity for rebuttal, although the candidates are welcome to use their 2-minute closing statement to address or clarify something brought up earlier in the forum. So without further ado, we are going to go ahead and get started. So candidates, as we read these questions and do our opening statements, I would ask, if I don't say your name, that you remain muted, and then I'll give you a moment to unmute while I read the question and give you the length of time that the question will be. If you have any questions during this, just let me know. Okay, in our random drawing, Bishop Davison, you are going to be giving your opening statement first. And you will have 2 minutes to give your opening statement. You can go ahead and unmute yourself. And you are unmuted, you are good to go, and you may begin your 2-minute opening statement now.
Hello, my name is Bishop Davidson. I'm running for state representative in Western Greene County. I hope that there are some Western Greene County folks in the room. What that means is Republic, Willard, Ash Grove, Walnut Grove, Bodark, and Brookline. Sam, I think I can introduce that part for both of us. I've jumped into this race about 11 months ago, and I'm running on the Republican ticket. And I would say, more importantly, though, I'm running as a conservative Republican. I put those things in that order. A big part of why I jumped in is because I really think that conservatism is misrepresented and therefore misunderstood. You know, conservatives talk a lot about efficiency and effectiveness of local government. They talk a lot about taxpayer dollars and fiscal responsibility. And these things are all really important. But at the same time, I think there's an appeal to the heart to be made that we don't often make. The real reason I'm conservative is because I believe in human dignity and personhood and fulfillment. And I think that those institutions that exist in between the individual and the state are those institutions which give us the most meaning. That could be our families, our friends, churches, schools, places of work, even local municipalities, and so on and so forth. But these institutions, I believe, are strongest when they have responsibility to rise up to or a reason to exist. And if a state becomes over-involved or encroaching, it starts to chisel away at those responsibilities, leaving those institutions more hollow than they were before and eroding our communities in the process. This is the sort of conservatism I advocate for. It's not a new idea. It actually comes from old conservative history, theory, and philosophy. Before this, I was working for the Intercollegiate Studies Institute on college campuses and things of that sort. Thank you. Honestly, I think every politician says that they had no intent of running. I can prove it with pictures because last July I had hair down to here and a big beard, but decided to jump in, and here we are. I'm happy to be here and look forward to answering any questions and having a good open dialogue about issues. Perfect.
Thank you, Bishop. I'll have you mute yourself, and then Samuel Snyder, you will have an opportunity to share your opening statement for 2 minutes. If you want to unmute yourself. There we go.
All right.
And you may begin.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Samuel Snyder, so I am also running for state representative for the 130th District here in Western Greene County. So I would also describe myself as a conservative Republican, and traditional conservative Republican along those lines. As far as experience goes, I have served on my local Board of Aldermen here in Willard, Missouri, for about the past 4 years, and so I have witnessed firsthand how local government works and the different facets involved with government. Along with that, I also serve on the Missouri Municipal League Board of Directors, and so we will advocate on behalf of municipalities to the Missouri Legislature on different issues that affect the communities that we all live in. And I think that's important. I think I'm a little bit different. I think it's something that sets me apart from other candidates, is having that local government experience and knowing how that works, and knowing that, all government, I believe, really, the foundation of government really is local government. And so when it comes to government, it comes to, we talk about it being smaller in terms of those Republican values and having that small government and being very limited. And so that's what I believe, and that is why I'm running.
Thank you. Okay, Samuel, you will get the first question, and you will have 2 minutes to answer this question. And then after those 2 minutes, then Bishop will have the opportunity to answer the same question, 2 minutes. Here, I'll read the question and then you can start. Samuel, how will you work to increase job opportunities for your constituents? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. So when it comes to increasing job opportunities for my constituents, people throughout the community. I think one of the biggest things that we need to make sure that we do is really work on things that help businesses. So, that means low taxes. That means, a workforce development program that will bring in the proper workforce needed for companies, and making practices within the state, or basically advocating for laws and making laws that help businesses thrive, so that way new businesses can start up, and existing businesses can expand. So I already mentioned low taxes. I mentioned the workforce development program, making sure that we support those two things, and that, I think, ultimately will create jobs. A lot of when it comes to business, the state has a big role to play, but so do local governments. So I think being able to advocate for laws that also give municipalities the tools to be able to incentivize businesses to come into their communities, I think, is also important. Being able to help out everything from, your large municipalities such as St. Louis, or Springfield, would even be considered a larger one here in Missouri, to your smaller ones in our district. And I think that that's very important. So that is what I would be supportive of if I was elected, would be to do those two things in order to help constituents in terms of jobs.
Thank you, Samuel. Bishop, I'll read the question and then you'll have 2 minutes to answer. Bishop, how will you work to increase job opportunities for your constituents? You have 2 minutes.
I think there's a broader answer and more specific answer. Broadly, I do agree with Sam in a lot of ways. Some of the specifics of what those tax breaks might look like, I say tax breaks. It's really going to come down to for me, it's the corporate income tax, which I think sits at 6%, maybe 6.25%. I'd like to see that reduced to 2.5% at a minimum. And what that would do is it would make us the most competitive tax bracket system or tax rate in the union, besides 2 states that actually don't have any corporate income tax. But it would make us the most competitive of those who do. The next one being 3.5%, I think, in North Carolina. Secondly, I'd be interested in seeing the capital gains income tax also reduced. And I always mix them up, 6% or 6.25%. But I'd like to see that drop down all the way to 0%. And what I think these 2 changes would do is it would encourage businesses to keep jobs here, and it would encourage businesses to move jobs here as well. I think especially in response to COVID, we have to have a more diligent, more agile economy that's capable of bouncing back quickly. I think what we're going to see in the mid to long-term effects of COVID on the economy is not going to be as much, it's going to be jobs at the end of the day. I think we rebound that, though, by seeing money move. And if we lower that capital gains income tax, we're going to see money move into the market. Oh, no. I would also like to see regulation limited. I'd like to revisit licensing procedures. Specifically, the schools in this area are one of the largest job providers, and we know that we're in need of teachers. And so I think there are several things we can do to start enticing more teachers and opening up more jobs in the school districts here in Greene County as well. I think I'm getting close to my end time. Among those changes that I'd like to see, one, I would say we could, well, I'll just pause there and we'll let it be Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you. Bishop, you start the next question. This is a 1-minute question. You'll have an opportunity to answer, and then Samuel, you'll have the same question. Bishop, where do you see opportunities for different political parties to find common ground and start to bridge the divide? You have 1 minute. I'm
just going to continue on education because I think that's one of the biggest bridges we can build. Honestly, there's no one who doesn't want to educate our children, and I don't understand the wall that exists between public and private options. And some of the things and some of the reforms I think would be likely to bring Democrats and Republicans together. I would be inclined to really empower local school districts, school boards, and teachers, as well as enabling parents. And so, what a lot of that looks like, and this also goes back into the jobs question. I'd love to see school districts having the power to decide things like, um, perhaps locally certifying up to 20% of faculty in their school district. I'd like to see them have more hands-on curricular decision making. Left and right, Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. The folks that I talk with see that real reform in our education system isn't going to happen by me and 9 other state reps and a PhD in education. It actually occurs in the classroom when we have the best and brightest among us in front of our students. Education.
Thank you. Samuel, I'll read the question and then you'll have 1 minute to answer. You can go ahead and unmute yourself while I read the question. Where do you see opportunities for different political parties to find common ground and start to bridge the divide? You have 1 minute.
Thank you. Sorry, I just got to fix the phone here. So there are a number of different topics we could talk about, but I think one that's fairly relevant right now would be probably our law enforcement. Right now there's a lot of talk about defunding police departments, and I think I think Republicans or Democrats alike believe we need law and order in general. And so I think that we need to make sure that our law enforcement community is taken care of. I think that we need to make sure that we continue to encourage that. I know that's more of a national topic, but I think that, that's just as important here in Missouri as it is anywhere else in the country. And I would like to see more funding go towards that on the state level, and even down to communities. And so I think that's where kind of that middle ground. I think that's one of the topics that Democrat or Republican, I think you can get behind.
Thank you. Bishop, you will go first with this question. You will have 2 minutes. One of the basic functions of the Missouri General Assembly is to fund our public schools, a requirement spelled out in the Missouri Constitution. How will you work to ensure all students receive equal educational opportunities no matter where they live? You have 2 minutes.
So school funding is obviously a difficult question, especially because I'm a person who, I think I'm going, yeah. I didn't take over the big screen. I'm going to keep going. I think school funding is a hard question, especially because we have such a balanced budget here in Missouri, which I approve of, but also because I'm someone who likes the idea of seeing our teachers compensated more. Now, how to do that, I can't begin to tell you. There seems to be a lot of political interest in that and not a lot of political execution. And so I think there's going to be challenges I'm going to have to learn to wade through when I get there. But by and large, my focus would be on more efficient use of dollars, not necessarily finding ways to get more dollars, although I think there will be good creative ways that we can do that, but making sure that the money spent is spent well. Right now, for instance, I think there's too much bureaucracy. I think there's too much administrative costs in the education of our children and not enough emphasis or investment in the classroom, sort of like what I spoke to before. And so for me, some of the education reform policies that I have in mind, I think would bring that opportunity back into the classroom like we were talking before. Not only an opportunity to have more dollars per student to be spent on those students, but then also, the byproduct of that is a better educational atmosphere. I think part of the problems that we see in our schools are actually the fact that our teachers aren't being trusted to do the job that they're trained to do, the job that they're passionate about. And so for me, it's about empowering those teachers. I mentioned some of the specific policies, all of which I'd be happy to address in Q&A. I have more specific policies as well. but I would want to focus first and foremost on making our spending more efficient than it is right now. And then second most, explore ideas for how we might be able to bolster the budget of our education system. Thank you.
Thank you. Samuel, you have 2 minutes to answer this question. I'll read the question and then you can begin. One of the basic functions of the Missouri General Assembly is to fund our public schools, a requirement spelled out in the Missouri Constitution. How will you work to ensure all students receive equal educational opportunities no matter where they live? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. You know, education is usually kind of a sticky subject when it comes to you know, the best ways to fund it, the best ways to implement policies. I think that the best way to ensure that you know, students are getting the best education possible really comes down to the dollar amount. And a lot of schools, you know, even though they're funded from the state, a lot of schools rely heavily on property taxes. So, you know, you might have, I mean, well, you have better funded schools in some districts than you do in others, just simply because of the property tax value of that district. And so I don't think that funding, that pot of money that's coming from property taxes necessarily means that you're going to have a better or lesser education quality. I think it really comes down to picking the right teachers. I think it comes down to making sure that you know, you continue that pipeline of having, you know, those well-qualified teachers that are you know, hungry to come into the classrooms and teach students. And so making sure that there is enough funding available for each school district, I think, is important. And then I also think that it's important to make sure that school districts are encouraged to hire high quality staff to implement those programs. Because, you know, whether you have you know, high quality technology, you know, in your classroom, such as iPads, or if you have you know, books that you're textbooks that you're primarily using for learning, I think that you know, it really comes down to making sure that we incentivize school districts to hire high quality teachers that are going to be able to go into the classroom and incentivize those students. So thank you.
You're going next, Samuel, for this first question. This is a 1-minute question. Clean Missouri, the constitutional amendment passed by Missouri voters in 2018, requires a nonpartisan demographer to draw new legislative districts after the 2020 census. Amendment 3 is on the November ballot and seeks to repeal Clean Missouri. Do you support Clean Missouri, and why or why not? You have 1 minute.
Thank you. So Clean Missouri has definitely been used or definitely can be seen as a political football. You know, as a Republican, and I think it would happen if you were in either party, you know, when you see the system being taken away from, you know, basically a committee of Republicans and Democrats deciding how the district lines are going to be drawn, and you give that to one person, even though they say it's going to be nonpartisan, you know, how is that so? I feel like we all kind of have a bias, right? And so doing that in the way that it was done, with having the auditor being the one that chose that individual, and then happening to be Democrat, you know, raises a lot of red flags. I think there were you know, some good things in there in terms of the lobbyist contributions being brought down
Thank you.
to an extent, but that's about it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bishop, you will have 1 minute to answer this question. I'll read the question and then you can begin. Clean Missouri, the constitutional amendment passed by Missouri voters in 2018, requires a nonpartisan demographer to draw new legislative districts after the 2020 census. Amendment 3 is on the November ballot and seeks to repeal Clean Missouri. Do you support Clean Missouri, and why or why not? You have 1 minute.
I do not support Clean Missouri. I support Cleaner Missouri. I actually did a debate with this on the Democrat last week. Feel free to watch it. It's all recorded on my page, and I talk about it often. I am against it for a lot of reasons, but I'm going to distill it down to two. One is the nonpartisan demographer. Samuel touched on this. I don't believe there's such thing as nonpartisanship, although that's not really the issue. It's more, I think, the priorities, the reprioritization of what that nonpartisan demographer has to conform to. They have removed the priority, not removed it, but it's been lowered, the priority of continuous compact districts, and lowered it down the list to number 6, I believe. And fair and equal, 50% districts have become the new priority after the two law mandated priorities. And this is the issue that I have with Clean Missouri, and it's why I support Cleaner Missouri, is because the danger then becomes that you are creating districts seeking 50% Republican, 50% Democrat, and it starts to get a little unwieldy and wild and break up communities in the process. Thanks.
Okay, Bishop, you will be going first for this next section, this next question. This is a 1.5 minute question. I'll read the question and then you can begin. So if you want to unmute yourself while I read the question. What areas of public policy are you personally passionate about and why? You have 1.5 minutes.
I hope it's been noted. I'm very passionate about education. My mom and dad are educators. My mom's a small business owner and is a pediatric occupational therapist. My dad's an elementary school teacher, and my desire is to eventually teach. This is actually just a bit of a detour. I studied history and classics in school, and so my passion really lies in education, and I think I've spoken to that already. I'd like to see educational decisions made at more local levels. I think we get a better education system in doing so, and we provide better education for our children in the process. Other passions of mine is the family. I think the family is the building block of government. I know we learned it was the individual. I think that's a good theoretical building block, but practically and naturally, historically, it's the family. And so I want us to make sure that the policies we pass aren't just being thought through 2 years in advance, like a normal state rep who's just thinking one term at a time, but really looking decades down the line and wondering and asking, is this constructive or destructive of the family? Because I do believe all policy passed is either destructive or constructive of the family. Lastly, I would say the Second Amendment is a great passion of mine, and that's because I see it as really an extension of property rights, and property rights are an extension of our personhood. And I think we overlook some of the important arguments defending the Second Amendment, and I've seen Republicans give up on that original argument, and that's really discouraged me. So it's something I'm particularly passionate about as well.
Thank you. Okay, Samuel, you'll have 1.5 minutes to answer this question. I'll read the question. If you want to unmute yourself while I read the question, then we can begin. Samuel, what areas of public policy are you personally passionate about and why? You have 1.5 minutes.
So I would say the first public policy that I'm probably the biggest about, actually wouldn't be the biggest, it's about equal, but I've spent the most time working in it, which would be local government. And the reason I'm passionate about local government is because it is closest to the people and it's closest to your community and your constituents. You know, there is a lot to be said about being able to just call up your local council member, and if you have an issue about something, and you know, it's something that can be talked about at the next meeting. There is a lot to be said about that. So that would probably be, and number one, my biggest, I guess, passion would be local government, how that works for the people and for the community. Second, you know, I've got a daughter, and so being able to protect the lives of the unborn is very important to me. You know, once I had my daughter, I think, you know, things really changed. I mean, she's 3 years old now, and she, I couldn't imagine not having her, and being able to make sure that we protect those lives, I think is important. And so, that's why those are my two passions.
Thank you. Samuel, you'll be first on this next question. It's a 1-minute question. Samuel, the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry supports Amendment 2. In their statement of support, they stated it is a, quote, pro-jobs measure that will help fuel economic growth throughout our state. According to economic projections, expanding Missouri's Medicaid program will boost job creation by 16,000 jobs per year for 5 years. Likewise, passage will expand our state's economic output by $2.5 billion, end quote. Do you support Amendment 2, the expansion of Medicaid in Missouri? You'll have 1 minute to answer.
I think that a lot of people are hurting right now. I think it's a tough time, especially with COVID going on, and a lot of people losing jobs, and a lot of people needing a lot of additional assistance and help. And so I would say that it would be something that I would have to take a look at a little bit further to make sure that I fully understood before I went in on answering that question. So I'm just gonna leave it there and go ahead and let Bishop answer.
Thank you. Bishop, I'll read the question and then you'll have 1 minute to answer. Bishop, the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry supports Amendment 2. In their statement of support, they stated it is a, quote, pro-jobs measure that will help fuel economic growth throughout our state. According to economic projections, expanding Missouri's Medicaid program will boost job creation by 16,000 jobs per year for 5 years. Likewise, passage will expand our state's economic output by $2.5 billion, end quote. Do you support Amendment 2, the expansion of Medicaid in Missouri? And you'll have 1 minute to answer.
No, I'm against Amendment 2. I'll be voting no. I don't think this has a whole lot to do with me as a state representative, given that it will be voted on come August, but I'm happy to give you my personal opinions on the subject and tell you what I'll be doing myself and why I'll be doing it. The reason that I'm going to be voting no is actually because I think it's a reckless way of growing jobs. I don't think that job growth is sustainable job growth, and more importantly, it's not sustainable for the economy of our state nor the budget of our state. I understand kind of the heart of it at times, but truly we have to be more mindful of, are we creating systems that are not sustainable down the long term, and also are they creating people who are dependent on systems of the government? I think it's trying to address a problem that has a deeper root. Should there be healthcare reform or reform around our healthcare system? Absolutely. And are there ways that we can create more open communication between patients and providers? Absolutely. And I believe I have to stop. So I'd be happy to answer more questions in the Q&A. Thank you.
Okay, Bishop, you will be the first to answer this next question, and then Samuel, you'll have an opportunity to answer as well. This is a 1.5 minute question. Bishop, the NAACP issued a travel advisory for the first time ever for the state of Missouri in 2017, after Senate Bill 43 was passed by the state legislature, making it extremely difficult for employees to sue for discrimination based on race, gender, and/or religion. The advisory remains in effect due to the high frequency of racist incidents in our school districts, on college campuses, in the healthcare system, and in law enforcement. Question, what anti-racist actions are you taking personally, and what legislation would you propose to dismantle racism in all institutions in Missouri? You will have 1.5 minutes.
Yeah. Let's see here. Actions personally, and then legislation. Actions personally, I think honestly, prejudice, racism, I think it's a part of our corrupted nature, and so it's something that we have to have an ongoing conversation about. It's not something that's going to be done away with in a generation or a decade or anything like that. It's got to be conversations we continue to have each new generation. And so I've had these conversations with my own family. I've also tried to have some of these conversations publicly through our fireside chats and Facebook lives with different African Americans, so on, just to have the conversation in front of folks and see if we can model those conversations well. I wish I would have set a timer for this. I'm going to move to the legislation point. I think actually a lot of the systemic racism we see is the product of over legislation. It's the product of trying to legislate away a cultural issue. And so when you ask me what sort of legislation would I be interested in, I would be interested in revisiting qualified immunity. I would be interested in looking at the way that we incentivize or don't incentivize incarceration. I would be willing to look at criminal justice reform more broadly. But legislatively at this time, I don't see that there are many things that I can do as a state representative. Now, me personally is a different situation, but as a state representative, I don't think there's a lot that I can do to help. Most of what I do would have probably hurt. Thank you.
Okay, Samuel, this question is a 1.5 minute question. If you want to unmute yourself, I'll read the question and then you can begin. Samuel, the NAACP issued a travel advisory for the first time ever for the state of Missouri in 2017. After Senate Bill 43 was passed by the state legislature, making it extremely difficult for employees to sue for discrimination based on race, gender, and/or religion. The advisory remains in effect due to the high frequency of racist incidents in our school districts, on college campuses, in the healthcare system, and in law enforcement. Question: what anti-racist actions are you taking personally, and what legislation would you propose to dismantle racism in all institutions in Missouri? You have 1.5 minutes.
Thank you. As far as anti-racist actions that I'm taking personally, so I'm African American. I've got I was adopted. My parents are white. I've got a family that's mixed, black and white, and so personally, I don't really feel that I have any type of real bias when it comes to race. I'm not really taking any additional steps other than people are people, no matter what color you are, and so just treating people like people, I think, is the way to do that. As far as legislation goes, I have to agree with Bishop on that. In terms of very specific legislation, it'd be something I have to look at, when it comes to criminal justice reform and when it comes to making sure that the system is fair for everyone. So I don't have anything specific on that, but it's definitely something worth looking at for sure.
Thank you. Samuel, you'll go first on this next question. This is a 2-minute question, and then Bishop, you'll have an opportunity to answer. This is our last question submitted by the collaborating partners, and after that, we'll have some audience questions. Samuel, here's the question. Missouri is the only state in the United States that does not have a prescription drug monitoring program, PDMP. According to the National Alliance for Model State Drug Laws, a PDMP is a statewide electronic database which collects designated data on substances dispensed in the state. Will you support a PDMP for Missouri, and why or why not? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. No, I do not support a statewide PDMP. I think even though Missouri is the only state not to have a statewide PDMP, we do have counties that have their own, and I think that a lot of it comes down to how it's going to be implemented and the data collection that will arise from having a statewide PDMP. I think that I think a lot of that needs to be left at the local level, so I do not support a statewide PDMP.
Thank you. Bishop, you will have 2 minutes. I will read the question and then you can answer. Bishop, Missouri is the only state in the United States that does not have a prescription drug monitoring program, PDMP. According to the National Alliance for Model State Drug Laws, a PDMP is a statewide electronic database which collects designated data on substances dispensed in the state. Will you support a PDMP for Missouri? Why or why not? You have 2 minutes.
I would not support PDMP in Missouri. The first reason, I think, is a very simple reason, and it's one that I can point to. I actually literally had on my desk just the Missouri Constitution. It's Article 1, Section 15, and it talks about unreasonable search and seizure prohibited, and it includes access to electronic data or communication. And I think that very clearly just constitutionally covers it to say that it's not a constitutional program to create a database of electronic data that the government has access to without due process or without some sort of opting in participation of that person. So on its very face, I'm against PDMP on constitutional grounds, Missouri constitutional grounds. Now let's set up a different question, right? Okay, if we were to amend the Missouri Constitution, would you then be for it, Bishop? I would still be against PDMP. There's a lot of data that suggests that it's not an effective form of preventing drug abuse and the opioid crisis. I think, again, it starts to treat symptoms as opposed to treating the underlying cause of the issue. But more importantly, I am particularly wary of large statewide databases full of citizen information and citizen data. I understand that it's been purported that it wouldn't be used for anything except for this particular reason, this, that, and the other, but the government never dies, right? I mean, who knows how it'll be used down the line, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 100 years from now, when the folks who are making the decision now aren't there to continue making that decision. I could go on about this, but I know I have about 10 seconds. So I would say, in a recap, Article 1, Section 15 is the very quick reason why I'm against it, but then principally I'm against it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Samuel, you will have an opportunity to answer this next question first. It is a 1-minute question. Sorry. Okay, here we go. You can unmute yourself while I read the question. Do you support public money going to private schools? You have 1 minute to answer the question.
I do not. I think when it comes to, can you hear me? I make sure that looks like you're frozen, but okay, good. But I do not support it. I think that public money should go to public schools. I think there's, obviously there's a lot of talk about education and making sure that, public schools get the funding that they need. And I think it should stay that way. And so that's my stance on that.
Thank you. Bishop, you will have 1 minute to answer this question. Do you support public money going to private schools? You have 1 minute.
Am I able to ask a clarifying question? Because I believe this came from the audience. Is this regarding charter schools particularly? Is that okay? I can just answer the question too as best I can.
There was no clarification. It looks like it was just that
Private
question.
schools,
Yeah, so I think you could answer both and that would take care of it.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, money has gone to private schools in different capacities, right? Grants, things of that sort, and I'm perfectly fine with that. If you're asking more about charter schools, whomever the questioner is, I'm for charter schools within the right environment. Here in Western Greene County, we actually have some excellent school districts. I've had a chance to sit with all the superintendents, and so I want to enable our public schools as much as possible. The interesting thing about public money, though, going to private schools is that they necessarily become public schools in some capacity. What I will say is, regardless, I want to tear down the wall of animosity that exists between the private options and the public options. And I would like us to see more emphasis on the education of our children. So my number one priority is seeing that reform happen in the public school system. However, if there prove to be too many hurdles, which I've heard about but can't speak to directly myself, then I'm open to seeing innovative education carried out elsewhere, whether that be private options or charter options. Thank you.
Thank you. I will note for the audience that if there's any additional questions, you're welcome to type them in the Q&A, either anonymously or with your name, and I'll continue to ask a few questions and wait for some more to come in. All right, Bishop, you will be first on this next question. This is a 2-minute question. I'll read the question and then you can begin. Bishop, what are your thoughts regarding term limits? Do you think they benefit democracy? You have 2 minutes.
I would love to know who asked this exactly, Dixie or Karen or Shelby. It's a great question. And it's a question that most of us say, absolutely, we love term limits. I would offer a little bit different of a perspective. You know, the thing is about term limits is while you're limiting the power of perhaps elected officials that may become corruptible, which is absolutely the case, and I understand the sympathy, I understand the sentiment and the desire to want to get folks who've been in there too long out, I would say it steals away autonomy, responsibility from the voter, because all power actually resides with them at the ballot box. Those who aren't termed out or who seem to have been in office too long are getting voted into office. And so I don't want to steal away responsibility from the voter. I think that's what term limits starts to do. But more than that, I think it also makes a power shift occur. And that shift of power moves from the elected officials to the unelected officials. And what I mean is that as you limit the time that legislatures and officials are spending in our Congress, what happens is that power shifts from them to their staff, because they don't become the sort of the knowledgeable minds on the hill, right? They don't become the institutional knowledge that they always have been. Instead, that institutional knowledge is found with bureaucrats and with staffers and things of that sort. The trouble I have with this is that those bureaucrats and those staffers aren't elected officials, and there aren't good systems of transparency or good systems of holding them accountable. And I would much rather the power reside in a more transparent, accountable system of representatives that have at least some sense of accountability to the people, as opposed to the bureaucrats that we see, whether at any level for that matter. So what I would say about term limits is I think it's a nice idea in theory, but practically it actually just makes corrupted power dark corrupted power, shadowy corrupted power. I'm not saying that government doesn't have a corrupting effect on people or politicians. I'm very wary of that, but I think I would rather it be there in the transparent open. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Samuel, you'll have 2 minutes to answer this question. You can go ahead and unmute yourself while I read the question, and then you can begin. What are your thoughts regarding term limits? Do you think they benefit democracy? You have 2 minutes.
I think that it is okay to have term limits, but really it comes down to how long. You know, how long is too long, right, for an elected official to be in a position. And I would also agree with the fact that there is a power shift from the elected official, and it does take away from the voter that elected them in the office to begin with. But to an extent, yes, I would say I'd have to agree that power does shift to staff. But I would say that the larger, probably more dangerous power shift happens in the back offices when it comes to the lobbying groups. So, you know, a big thing, one of the most important things is institutional knowledge. So when you've been in office for, you know, a number of years, you have the institutional knowledge to know, you know, what works and what doesn't work. And you learn the different facets of both government and the lawmaking process. And right now, you kind of have this churn. So every between that 2 to 8 year cycle, you have new representatives getting elected. So the people that are really making or having a huge influence on laws are lobbyists, and that's not just in Missouri. That's all over the country where you have places that have term limits. And so I would say that it's really not about should we have term limits or not. I mean, that is the question, but really how long is too long before you need fresh new ideas coming in to the system, and also making sure that those elected officials that you do elect don't become corrupt, and don't that they keep the voters' thoughts top of mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have one question, another question. We will start with Bishop with this question. Bishop, would you support an abortion amendment to limit abortion under any circumstances? Do you believe life begins at conception? We'll do a one minute question.
Okay, yeah. Yes, I believe life begins at a conception. I'm 100% pro-life, which means if it begins at conception, then there can be no exception. And so legislatively, the way that I work and the standard that I go by, I'm going to ask the question, would this piece of legislation, would it save one life as I see it, right? Would it save one unborn life? And if the answer is yes, then I am absolutely for it. That makes me what's called an incrementalist, not an abolitionist. Well, would I abolish abortion if I could? Yeah, but I'm willing to take baby steps along the way, and I think the reason that I'm willing to take those small steps along the way is because very practically, very realistically, it is the difference between a certain margin of lives. So if I could pass a bill that required the biological father's consent, I would, and some might get on to me and say, oh, you're allowing abortion. I would say, no, I'm actually limiting the number of abortions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Samuel, this is a 1 minute question. Would you support an abortion amendment to limit abortion under any circumstances? Do you believe life begins at conception? You have 1 minute.
First of all, yes, I do believe life begins at conception. I think that you get into this slippery slope on what should we limit, what should we not limit, and when it comes down to it, a life is a life, and like I said before, that's a big passion of mine. With having my daughter, I don't think that there really should be any exceptions when it comes to that. I think we need to be making sure that laws are continued to be supported that protect the lives of the unborn.
Thank you. That concludes our audience questions and our questioning time for today. Now we are going to move on to closing statements. Your closing statements can be 2 minutes. Bishop, you went first in opening statements, so Samuel, you'll be going first in closing statements. You will have 2 minutes for your statement, and then you will be asked to stop at 2 minutes. I'll give you a 30-second warning. And Samuel, whenever you begin, we will start the timer for 2 minutes for your closing statement.
So first of all, I just want to thank you so much for hosting this event and giving us an opportunity to speak directly about the issues to voters. And I would, ask for your support when it comes to this race. I do believe that I would be a good representative for the district, and I do believe that I would be able to support the policies that, or the different types of measures that I would like to get in place, in order to support the Second Amendment, support agriculture, to make sure that the lives of the unborn are protected, and to make sure that local governments and the voice of the people is continued to be heard. I think that's important. So just ask for your support, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Bishop, we will start your 2-minute closing statement whenever you would like to begin. We'll start the timer.
Thank you all for having me. We haven't had much time to talk at all. Honestly, these little 1-minute bites, it's given you hopefully a good overview of what I believe and who I am, but I'd encourage you to dig deeper. I am confident I can earn your vote. I can earn your support. And some of the ways that you can dig a little bit deeper are at my website, bishopformo.com. You can also find my Facebook page, Bishop Davidson for Mo. There you're going to find me weekly, Tuesday nights at 8 p.m., doing a fireside chat. That's a Facebook Live video where I do just a full-blown Q&A for 40 minutes every Tuesday. And the intent isn't to just do that as a candidate, but then to do that as a state representative as well. You will find no state representative who is going to be more accessible than me. Of all the candidates, I'm the only one who was at every event, every festival. This past election cycle, I go to the city council meetings. I am consistently available and consistently in our communities because I'm looking to represent you. I would ask that you do dig deeper, and feel free to email me at bishop@bishopformo.com. You can also text or call me at 417-647-1383. We've had a really exciting go. It's been 11 months. We now have 20 days, and we're going to need every vote we can get. It's a really good competitive race, and that makes your vote all the more important. I know they say your vote matters all the time. Sometimes it doesn't feel that way when it comes to federal politics, but here down in Western Greene County, it really is true. So I would, again, encourage you to just reach out to me, get to know me more, press me on the issues. I realized that I actually hadn't talked so much about my passion when it comes to the pro-life movement. I've been at Every March for Life these last 4 years in DC. It's something very important to me. It's just something I don't see myself being a legislative leader for, because we have those good legislative leaders in Missouri already. So 417, whoops. I set my own timer that time. I finally caught on by the end.
Well, perfect. We will stop at the 2-minute mark. Thank you both for your time and participating today. I'm going to share now your contact information again for the audience, as well as for anyone who views this video looking for information about the candidates in the next 20 days. Both contact information for both candidates are here. I did want to also review briefly voting information. So the deadline to register for the August 4th primary election has passed. The deadline to register for the November 3rd general election is October 6th. You may vote absentee now through Monday, August 3rd at 5 p.m. To do that, you go to the Greene County Clerk's office. To vote in person on Election Day, Tuesday, August 4th, polls are open from 6 a.m. until 7 p.m. We strongly encourage you to get out and vote. If you have any questions, you can call the Greene County Clerk's office. Their website and phone number is listed on the screen. If you choose to do an absentee mail-in ballot, to request one, you go to the Greene County Clerk's office, or you send a written request. The deadline to put in an absentee request must be received by the Greene County Clerk's office by July 22nd at 5 p.m. Notarization of ballots. All absentee mail-in ballots must be notarized unless you meet an at-risk requirement, which includes you are confined due to illness or disability, or are caring for someone. You are 65 years or older, live in a long-term care facility, or have a chronic disease. Ballots must be received by the Greene County Clerk's office by 7 p.m. on Tuesday, August 4th. Do not wait to mail in your ballot. As I mentioned, this forum was recorded by Leadership Springfield and will be posted on these websites: ksmu.org, thelibrary.org, and leadershipspringfield.org. These websites will have the recording posted hopefully by the end of this week. Again, no part of this video may be reproduced or transmitted in any form or by any means, electronic or mechanical, without the written permission of the copyright holder, which is Leadership Springfield. As a reminder, the primary election is Tuesday, August 4th. That's your reminder. Again, we can't say it enough to get out and vote. Thank you again to the candidates for participating in this forum and sharing your views with the public. Thank you both for your hard work of running your campaign and being a part of our democracy. And audience members currently, as well as those who are watching online, please support your candidate. But if your candidate is not elected, it is your job to keep an open dialogue with whoever is elected. We appreciate all of you participating both today as well as following up and watching online. We thank you for your time tonight,